After deciding to try many different games to broaden my views on gaming and the artistic implication behind some titles, I found a game called Signalis which caught my attention at first glance. So in contrast to the video I made earlier on the game, I wanted to make this video to talk about my very subjective experience with Signalis. This is not an objective review of Signalis, this is my very subjective take on the game and the experience I've had with it. In this new series of subjective reviews, I'll be marking each point I make with a rating ranging from catastrophic all the way to innovative. I'll only be talking about what was remarkable playing the game, either positively or negatively. There will probably be spoilers ahead if you haven't played the game yet, so let's get into it. So you're telling me this is a game about a spaceship with anime robots inside that have to rely on some weird technology and it uses a lot of German and Japanese? I think I've seen this before. This immediately reminded me of the Xeno franchise, both Xenosaga and Xenogears. Anime-styled characters on a spaceship. The game starting with the main character laying down in a futuristic-looking machine. Technology playing an important part of the setting. All of this immediately rang a bell. The Xenosaga games even had German titles internationally, and one of the main characters, Cosmos, was a female android. Cosmos with a K is the German way of writing the English word cosmos. So one of the main characters in Xenosaga is a female android with a German name. Doesn't that sound familiar? Much like Signalis, Xenogears also had robots with German names, just like the replica names. I didn't play much of both series, but even though they don't have much in common with Signalis, it was enough for me to not find the concept new, a fun detail nonetheless. I found the game's story to be incomprehensible. I genuinely did not understand much of what was happening throughout the game, and I'm not the only one either. Many people online expressed the same feeling. That's usually not a good sign. It took me way until the end of the game that I even got a glimpse of what was going on, and still, I don't understand the whole setting yet. The game's story starts with you trying to find Alina's CEO, but afterwards things start to get confusing. I don't want to rely on the internet to understand a game's story, and what do you know, the game has a lot of theories and whatnot. The free of interpretation and the reach your own conclusions are to me usually a sign that a game's story isn't well told to the player, not because of a bad story itself, but because of its storytelling. I feel that the game doesn't explain enough of what's happening. You get introduced to characters, worlds, relationships, events, but the setting itself isn't properly explained, at least in my experience, which is a shame because if the story was explained better, this would have easily been one of my favorite titles of the last 10 years. Some people might find that to be a positive instead, arguing that it makes the storytelling unique. Maybe Signalis is a more complex piece of art that requires a form of artistic literacy to comprehend, and that is valid too. The most memorable pieces of art don't always follow the rules, and I'm all for innovation. Overall, I found the gameplay pretty fun. Entering rooms to find items that continues the story, solving puzzles, shooting enemies or running away from them. It was a fun experience, I don't have much to say about it. Aiming can be tough sometimes, but for a game of this genre, I don't mind it that much. The inventory being limited to only 6 items is restrictive, but still that's part of the game, I didn't mind it really. And it makes sense in a way. People can only carry so much before it starts to get comical. Basically your Resident Evil inspired survival horror game with ammo and health management. I enjoyed this genre of game, so it was fun for me. You know what isn't fun? Not being able to change the controls of a game in the year 2022. You can't bind your own controls, you have to play with WASD. And being a Frenchie, I used this keyboard layout, so I had to install the QWERTY keyboard layout to be able to play properly. Installing the QWERTY keyboard isn't a problem by itself, it's very easy to do, but it's not something I expect to do when I want to play a game. I really don't like using WASD. I always use Y, G, H, J as my directional keys and the game didn't allow me to do that. This issue made me so surprised the first time that I was genuinely not going to give the game a chance past the settings screen. This pushes people away from your game. If this was an old game, I wouldn't mind, but in 2022 that's unacceptable. It's such an unexpected inconvenience. The first person part of the game didn't make sense to me. The first time it happens, you'd be playing normally in the level, and then all of a sudden you get transported out of nowhere to the outside, and it makes no sense. I actually reloaded the save at that point 2 times just to see the animation to be sure that I didn't miss something, but this is literally how it plays out. The fact that enemies can regenerate after being killed and that the flare item needed to stop them from doing so is extremely low in number, in addition to the fact that you can basically rely on the last health states using regeneration with no consequences, made it so that I kept running away from the enemies and barely ever used weapons or ammo in my playthrough in preparation for the boss fights, which is a shame. If the enemies simply died from weapons and couldn't regenerate, I would probably have used the weapons more and had more fun. The puzzles are fine. I'm notoriously terrible at puzzles in general, and I was able to get through all of them with ease. Although some puzzles I genuinely don't understand the reason of their existence. One puzzle made me laugh because it was really straightforward. In one room, the game shows you a frame with butterflies that have patterns that form letters on their wings. The game proceeds to put the word pareidolia on the bottom of the frame. For those who don't know, pareidolia means seeing patterns in things. Then the game asks you to enter a letter code on a safe next to the frame. You're basically giving the answer to the puzzle by writing pareidolia on the bottom. They also did this with the water pipe puzzle, where the answer to the puzzle is literally in the same room on a piece of paper written raw. A puzzle isn't fun if you give the answer to it, so why even put those puzzles in the game then? If the developers thought they're not obvious unless they give you a huge hint, then you might as well scrap the whole puzzle and make a better one. Aside those two puzzles, most of them were fun to do, especially the frequency ones, I liked those. I really enjoyed the radio mechanic. It was a smart and fitting addition to the game. Not only does it work well with the setting of the game, but it also does a great job at immersing you in the universe of Signalis. The use of the SIT tone throughout the game was really cool. It gave a great ominous feeling that actually builds a creepy atmosphere, unlike some of the other things they did that I'll talk about later. For those who don't know, this is the SIT tone. It's used by phone carriers to indicate a failure of some sort, whether the carrier wasn't able to put you on call with your contact or whatnot. Being someone who really loves to read about radio and the protocols based on it like GSM, this was really entertaining and fun to experience. After you finish the game for the first time, the story doesn't end there. You see, in order to do something new, the developers decided that you had to press begin after finishing the first part of the game, in order to continue the story. The issue is, begin also appears when you start a new save for the first time, so many people like me thought that the game ended there, because that's what they saw when they started the game for the first time. So I finished the first part of the game and I was sent to the title screen, so I was like, oh okay, well I didn't get an answer to the setting of the story. I pressed Alt F4 and I went to Google to find an explanation, only to be told that I had to click on begin after finishing the first part. Why? Can you not start the second part right after? Can you not give me a visual clue that I should press begin? The idea itself isn't bad, but the execution to me was poor. There's even a video on YouTube where someone plays the whole game and completely misses the hidden part at the end, so it's not just me. Graphically speaking, this is probably the best execution of aesthetics I've seen of any video game. Very clearly inspired from Metal Gear Solid 2 in both visual and sound design. From the weapons to the radio, the influence is obviously there, and I'm all for it. I love the 90s 2000s tech aesthetic, so I found that really pleasing. The rendering of the game is absolutely fantastic. Everything from the texture work to the lighting to the UI is on point, and I haven't played a game that did better with its presentation yet. Even though I personally don't like the art style used in anime, I grew to enjoy the art style of Signalis. The characters of the game are great, both in writing and design. I enjoyed interacting with the different replica models and Gestalt characters. Learning about them through the notes was also interesting. A good example of characters being simple and effective. I found the flashing sentences and words genuinely awkward, to the point where I couldn't stand seeing those constant flashes in the cutscenes. Something like this to me is a tool. You either use it little and well, or you use it too much and it becomes annoying. You have to find the middle ground between frequency and effectiveness. Especially the repeating "this is our promise" that you see through the cutscenes, where the game doesn't explain at all what it refers to until the very end. Imagine you're reading a story and then a line keeps appearing every time something important to the story happens with no explanation. Wouldn't that get annoying quick? A very small detail that I found incredibly beautiful was this. This boss theme uses the sound of a human breathing in, and then it cuts at the moment where you'd hear the sigh. This very small detail made me so uncomfortable in the boss section. I found that absolutely genius. The fact that I haven't seen anyone execute this idea before made it stick out. Details like this build the creepy atmosphere and it makes it memorable, not those flashing sentences that they use in the cutscenes. The game's gun sound effects are much more realistic from stuff you'll hear in other games. It's mixed to be louder than the game's ambience audio, so that the gunshot sounds audibly louder than everything in the scene, which makes sense and I found that really cool. Guns are loud in real life, almost deafening sometimes. I like that they managed to implement it well. I really appreciate that the game only uses music when it needs to. This is pretty unique. Battle themes are mostly rhythmic sound effects and I absolutely love that. It accentuates the severity of the setting. You only get to hear music in rare situations, when a cutscene triggers for example, which sometimes gives an uncanny sense of comfort that's lacking in the majority of the game. I really enjoyed this because it really draws you in the immersion of the game's universe. In conclusion, playing Signalis was a weird experience. This game has so many great things going for it in various aspects, but due to the weird decisions taken by the developers, it wasn't a coherent experience overall. I was left confused many times throughout my gameplay in such weird ways. I felt in many occasions that the developers did not want you to play their game, whether it's the incomprehensible storytelling, not being able to change the controls and whatnot. This is definitely not a game I would replay, but I still commend and appreciate the immense effort and artistic direction taken in Signalis. Despite its numerous issues, the game still has personality, aesthetics, interesting character and world design, and that's enough to make it memorable and stand out. But if I had to summarize my experience with Signalis in a single word, it would be confusion.